Hello, hi, welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on my video. My name is Sarah and this is Wicked Reading. So today we are going to talk about all of the books that I read in January for my January wrap-up video. And it was actually a pretty good month, but unfortunately my most anticipated book was my worst book of the month. Yeah, my worst book of the month. So that kind of sucks. But we found a lot of really good books and got a lot of surprises, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So in January, I ended up reading 7 books, which is actually pretty good. I did 3 of them on audiobook and the rest were all physical. I am so envious, quite frankly, of all the people that can read like in the teens and up to, I saw somebody who read like 25 books in 1 month. That is like so bananas to me. That's pretty much a book a day. And I so wish that I had the time to dedicate to just reading. But unfortunately, I have to put in like 40 to 50, sometimes even 60 hours outside of my house in a lab to work full time. So that sucks. So I don't really get to read as much as I want to. Don't read as much as everybody else, but I feel like 7 is still quite a lot of books. Like, even if you can only read 1 or 2 books a month, like that is such a great accomplishment. That's where I started. That's all I could handle at first. And now I'm just really deep into reading, so I kind of fly through them a lot quicker than I used to, but I still really kind of take my time with books. So I don't get through like so many, but I feel like I did pretty good this month. So I'm going to do this how I have typically done it. I'm going to talk about all the books that are part of a series first, and then after that we're going to talk about the rest of the books that I read in the month in the order of relative star rating. So like I said, I'm going to start with the books that I have read that are part of a series and that I'm in the middle of a series with. And in January I did all of these by audiobook, and I listened to the Time of Contempt, Baptism of Fire, and the Tower of Swallow, all by Andrzej Sapkowski, part of the Witcher series. So depending on if you count the short story collections as 1 and 2, these would be books 4, 5, and 6. But if you don't count the short story collections, it's books 2, 3, and 4 of the like original main kind of storyline, if that makes sense. And I hope that's right. The Witcher series in general is about a witcher named Geralt of Rivia. And a witcher is somebody who actually hunts and kills monsters for pay. And he is actually linked to a child of surprise named Ciri. And she is said to be pretty much the person that's going to change the whole outcome of the world. And he is destined to this child, and he takes on the responsibility of really being her protector. And within this world, a large war breaks out, and there's a lot of, I guess, conflict between humans, elves, dwarves, and all these other fantasy-like species. So I'm pretty much going to do a sentence of what each of these books really focuses on, if that works for you guys, because I can't get too deep into plot. But pretty much, Time of Contempt really focuses on a lot of sorcerers and a lot of political game in terms of people that are playing as spies and double agents, and there's a lot of kind of political game going on behind the scenes. And yeah, in my head I pretty much equate this one to like sorceresses and political drama. I did really like this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5. So then Baptism of Fire is pretty much kind of just very journey driven. We're really following Geralt and some other great characters that are introduced in this book that I really loved. We're really following them journeying throughout the world pretty much, and they are trying to get and find somebody in particular. I think that's good. That's pretty much the main focus of this book. Now keep in mind, that seems very general, and for the most part in these books, like a lot of things happen, yet there's like kind of very few focal points, if that makes sense, for the most part in most of these books. So we're following somebody on a journey, and it's a very long, detailed journey, but then one chapter, and by the way, these chapters are like 100 to like 150 minutes each. I don't know what they equate to on the page because I don't have these physically, but they're very long chapters. But then like one chapter will kind of talk about another side plot that's also usually happening at the same time, but it's like different. Sometimes you're just thrown into a different character and you don't even really know who it is or how it connects until it does. I know that was sloppy and confusing. I'm sorry, that's the best I can do with these books. But I will say Baptism of Fire has been my favorite by far in all of the books that I've read so far. I gave this a 5 out of 5. It was no question for me. I just really, really liked the new characters that were introduced in this, and some of the side plots that were going on also interested me. And yeah, I really enjoyed the journey aspect of this particular book. So then finally, I listened to Tower of Swallow. Now, this one has a very heavy shift towards Ciri and really focusing on her journey that's been going on. All of this is happening while there's like a war brewing and Nilfgaard is trying to kind of take over a lot of different territories. So this one really focuses on Ciri and what she's going through in the midst of all of this. And yeah, it's very heavy towards Ciri and her story, and I did really enjoy it, but this one was 4 out of 5 for me. It was really, really great to get back into Ciri and see her development, but there was still some things that I just wasn't as interested in along the way as well. But I really did enjoy getting more into what Ciri has been going through during this time as well. Hopefully I explained those decent enough. Again, I can't go too deep into plot, but that's kind of like the bullet points of what I feel like those ones focus on. And yeah, so moving on to the rest of the books that I read this month. So we are going to go through these from my least to my most favorite, and we are starting off strong / weak, I guess, with the most disappointing book of me for the month, and that was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This one pains me so much because I anticipated this book so hardcore. I even started a reading vlog. It may or may not get posted. This book just let me down. Now, before I get too ahead of myself, this is a sequel to Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and in Ninth House, we follow our character Alex, and she has just had a really kind of rough go at life, and she can actually see grays, which are pretty much just ghosts of the dead, and she grew up with a lot of traumatic experience. Ninth House does get pretty graphic, so keep that in mind. She has gone through a lot of trauma, to say the least. And she is invited to attend Yale to be part of this group that actually oversees secret societies that are going on in Yale that dabble in kind of like dark magic and very gray area, gray morality kind of territory. Now, I did really enjoy Ninth House. That one I gave a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed the secret societies. It's kind of like dark academia with like fantasy, and I thought it was a really good time. There were some elements that I thought were kind of like, but overall I did really enjoy that story. I love Alex as a character. So in Hellbent, I will just say the overall kind of plot line that I understood it to be was that we're going to now go into hell to find somebody. So that's kind of like the super, super bare bones idea of what I was hoping for this book. And unfortunately, maybe I just like really grabbed that idea too hard. I mean, it is true, but like not to the extent that I thought it would be at. Okay, I'm not really making sense yet. So let me just say what I liked about this book. I liked Alex because I already did like Alex. I liked her. I liked getting to know her even more. I liked seeing her build and get deeper into other relationships with other people. And I really like our one character, Dawes, and I feel like we got a better idea of her in this book as well. And yeah, that's kind of where it stops, unfortunately. I already liked these characters, so I liked having these characters again. This was not a bad book. I enjoyed my reading experience enough while I was reading it. The issue for me is every time I set it down, like I just like did not feel compelled to pick it back up. So it ended up taking me so long to read this. I think it took me like 2 weeks or something to read this, like crazy. It just, I don't know, like it was fine, but like it just was just so not as interesting to me as the first one. I think what I really loved about the first one is just thoroughly lacking in this one. The first one I really loved, seeing what the societies were doing and following Alex and Darlington as they went into each society, as they were doing all these various rituals and kind of getting the idea of what really goes on there. I thought it was really cool, and there were a lot of cool elements to it. There is a scene in here that I really enjoyed because she is overseeing a ritual, and I thought that that scene was like crazy. Like it was quite disturbing, honestly, but that's what I liked about the first one, was seeing what these societies are doing. And there's not really too much of that in this one. It's very minimal because they are still at Yale, but it is very heavily focused on a different plot line. So the secret society aspect is kind of put to the side for the most part. Now this could be a spoiler, but I'm gonna like say it in a way that only if you think hard about it, you'll figure it out. But a lot of what I liked in terms of banter and dynamics in the first one was not very heavy in this one. We get it a little bit, but not for a while. And yeah, so there were certain characters and certain dynamics that I wanted a lot more of that I didn't get in this one. The plot of this, in my opinion, was just a little bit like messy. And yeah, just like in the beginning, some of the plot points just felt, I guess, lazy and unnecessary. Some of the things we were being fed, I thought it would come back up in much more of a dramatic way, and it didn't. And then in this one, I forgot to say, in Ninth House, there also is like a murder mystery within that book, which I enjoyed. And then in this one, there is also another murder mystery, and it just felt underbaked, I guess. I don't know. A lot of it was just, I don't know. I feel like this plot could have been so different and so much more exciting and engaging for me. Now, I will say a lot of people have been enjoying this, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. I thought I was going to like this way more than Ninth House, and I still like Ninth House better. This is just one of those books that is a great premise, and it just wasn't executed the way I was hoping, and it wasn't done as exciting or interestingly as I would have thought it would be. I don't know. Again, it's not a bad book. I still gave it a 3 out of 5. But yeah, it just in a lot of ways was lackluster. It's one of those books that I'm probably going to completely forget about, like what even happened. It does end in a way that makes it seem like there could be a third one. If there is a third one, I will still read it. But yeah, this one was just such a disappointment for me, unfortunately. And yeah, I'm pretty bummed about it. Okay, now moving on to probably my most surprising book of the month, and that is All's Well by Mona Awad. Now, the reason I bought this in the first place is simply because Mona Awad wrote it, and I love her. Bunny was my absolute #1 book of 2022, so she's an auto buy for me. Now, I will say I was a little bit apprehensive and a little bit worried because the two main topics of this book is not necessarily things that I'm interested or gravitated towards. So the premise of this book is we follow our main character Miranda, and she is actually a theater teacher at a college, and she herself used to be an actress on the stage in theater, but one day she falls off the stage and has an accident and no longer can perform, and now she's also dealing with chronic pain from that fall. She directs a class that specifically puts on plays by Shakespeare, and she's pushing for them to do the play All's Well That Ends Well, but they are pushing back a lot and they really want to play Macbeth. So there becomes this kind of conflict between her and all the students in her class. Mona Awad has such a unique storytelling style and unique writing style, and I really enjoy her storytelling abilities. She has a very, I guess, like a fever dream-esque type of story going on. Now, this one is, if you read Bunny, you know how off the wall and bizarre that one is, and I loved it. Now, this one does have some of those like fever dream-esque, very bizarre, very weird moments, but there is so much more plot to this one. I don't deal with chronic pain, and I don't really like Shakespeare, so I was a little bit worried going into this because those are the two main topics, but it surprised me so much. It really made me feel a lot of new kind of feelings and really opened my eyes, and I just loved the way that because of those two topics, she ties them together so well. She really opens up the conversation of chronic pain, and for people dealing with chronic pain, it's very much connected to theater and drama, because sometimes people dealing with chronic pain, to get the people around them to understand and almost empathize or sympathize with them, they almost have to play up their pain and perform their pain. It really does a great job, I feel like, of showing that relationship between patients with chronic pain and the healthcare system. And specifically with women, she talks about in the end, there's like a interview kind of style section, and she really talks about how much in the medical field are like women's pain is very much brushed off. We are seen to have a higher pain threshold, so we can deal with a lot more. Specifically, Black women are even more so not given proper pain management, because they're just seen as not feeling pain, which is just so wrong and so ignorant. So this really does a great job at kind of opening up that conversation, and at the same time creating a very interesting metaphor and linking it to theater. And she also kind of gets into this territory of how far people will go and what people will do in order to get rid of their chronic pain and get some relief from that. Now, I will say, because of all the Shakespeare stuff, I'm sure I missed a lot of more metaphors and all of that. She does at least kind of explain both Macbeth and like All's Well That Ends Well. She does a good job of explaining it enough where I feel like I understood where the connections were to be made without having actually read or seen or studied those plays personally. So while I may have not picked up on everything that this book had going for it, it still really surprised me, and I still really had a good time reading it, despite having been so apprehensive of the topics. So I did end up giving this a 3.5 out of 5. Again, it's not my most favorite book, but it's so well written, and it really opened up a good conversation. But it is very much character driven. There is plot, but it's still very character driven, so know that going into it. But I do recommend it, especially if any of those topics are interesting to you. I really love Mona Awad's style and her storytelling. All right, next up, this book has a little bit of drama behind it. Now, I do have a reading vlog posted of me reading this, particularly of me finishing it. And then actually the book we'll talk about next is also, like after this one, is also in that reading vlog. So if you want to check that out and get even more juicy details on the drama behind this book and me ranting about it, go ahead and check that out. But we're going to keep it short and sweet here, okay? So the next book is The Night and Its Moon by Piper C.J. So this is a fantasy, a sapphic fantasy actually, that follows our main characters, Amaris and Knox. These girls meet and grow up in an orphanage together, and because of that, they have an extremely tight, close bond. Knox very much sees herself as a protector for Amaris, who is actually fae-touched and described as very unique looking, and is really kind of an enigma because nobody really knows how fae-touched she is, if she has powers, but she looks very, very unique and very different to everybody else. But this orphanage is not as it seems, and they actually sell a lot of the kids off. So one day, a madam from a brothel comes in and she sees Amaris and immediately wants to buy her. She is taken up on her offer on the conditions that she has to wait until Amaris is considered a woman, and she will come back and gather her then. But when she comes back to get Amaris has fled, and Knox ends up taking her place. So right off the bat, let me just say, this book needed a better editor, period, point blank. There is a little bit of like grammar that I caught a lot, but nothing too crazy for me. I'm dyslexic though, so maybe I didn't notice it all. And there is quite a bit of repetitive writing, but more so it's almost like funny because Piper just really loves to associate characters with smells. So it was kind of very, okay, I get it, this woman smells like vanilla, I get it, but like again, not in too annoying of a way, but very much in, you can cut out some of that a little bit. And then she also really likes to, I noticed, describe the colors of the sky. So yeah, there's that. And there's a little bit of repetitive writing, and she would say something one way, and then the next sentence she would kind of say the same thing, but in a different way. So an editor, a good professional, true editor, needed to be had for this book. But nonetheless, that did not take away the story from me. I noticed it, but it was so minuscule that it was easy enough for me to ignore and just keep reading. The beginning of this story was a little bit rocky for me just because there's a lot of time jumps, and I don't like too many time jumps. It's like a little bit too much for me. But there were quite a bit of time jumps, and the writing seemed a little bit inconsistent in the beginning, but once we caught up to the age that the women are throughout majority of the book, and once I was able to get settled in, I really, really enjoyed the story. I really liked the characters. I loved seeing these two women and how different of journeys they go through, and jumping back and forth between the two. I will say, in the beginning, we get a lot more of Nox's point of view, and by like the middle end, it shifts heavily to Amaris. So I will say it would have been better for me personally, in my opinion, if there was a little bit more balance between both women. But nonetheless, like, I just really enjoyed the character arcs and the journeys and how different that they were, and I was thoroughly invested in both. And I enjoyed all the other secondary characters. I really enjoyed the fantasy elements, and I liked that this book was sapphic. Overall, I just had a really fun time reading this, and I think that that's the main thing for me that I got out of this, is like, it was fun and I had a good time despite the flaws of it. I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5. I really, really did enjoy it. I couldn't give it a true 5 because there are some flaws. There are some things that I wish were slightly different, but nothing major. Now, this is actually going to have a sequel. I think actually it's going to be a 3-book series. Don't quote me on that, but I know at least there's going to be a book 2, which actually releases at the end of February 28th. So I will be pre-ordering that and will be reading it. I'm very excited to see where this story is going to go, and yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. I thought it was good. I had a fun time, and yeah, that's that on that. We have 2 more books left. We are almost done. I am sweating. Let's go. So next up is Little Eve by Catriona Ward. This is also in the reading vlog that I posted with the 9 in its moon, so go ahead and check that out if you want. I'll get even more detail into that there. But Little Eve by Catriona Ward, the premise of this is we are following a clan in an isle on Scotland, and they're preparing for the end of the world. That's kind of it. I feel like that's all you need to know to go into this one. Now, I absolutely love Catriona Ward's writing style. Like, she is a 100% auto buy for me. I have enjoyed every single one of her books so far, and this is no exception. This was so good while I was reading it, but almost even better once I was done. So her writing style, I will say, if you haven't read one of her books yet, her writing style is, and like her plot and her books are very kind of confusing, but her writing is so purposeful and it all comes together in the end. But along the way, you're kind of like, what does this mean? Where is this going? Who is that? Like, where am I? It's very, very confusing at times, but I promise it all comes together, and it is still beautiful writing, and I love her stories so much. So this I was so excited for because it was like even more up my alley than her other 2 books were. So this very much is a cult book. I saw a Goodreads review that said this isn't a cult book. This is 100% a cult book, and this is everything that I want out of a cult book. So we follow 2 characters that are both girls in this clan, in this cult, named Eve and Dinah. We flip between their 2 POVs, but each of their POVs is happening at a different time. So one of the girls, you're following before a big dramatic event happens, and the other girl, you're following her POV after this dramatic event. Hopefully that makes sense. Like I said, it is a little bit confusing sometimes, but it comes together and it makes sense and it all ties together. It just, for me, it does such a fantastic job at truly highlighting and truly emanating the trauma and the confusion and the mindset for somebody who is at first 100% brainwashed in this cult, and then they kind of are taken out of that and are seeing it from the outside perspective, and their whole world is just shifting. What they thought was reality is no longer reality, and now there's this new reality. Who they thought they were is not who they can be anymore, and I don't know. This book gives me chills. I know I'm like kind of stammering because it's kind of hard to explain, but it's just like such a feeling that this book provoked in me, and I just really recommend it if you're interested in real cult books and like true understanding and perspective of the real manipulation that these people are going through, the real trauma that happens, and the real long-lasting effects that these cults have. This is very, very, very character driven. There's not too much plot. There's like obviously plot points, but you're very much just in the minds of these women as they're experiencing these things and their thoughts and feelings and then processing that along the way. I gave this a 4 out of 5. But really, I almost want to change it to a 5 out of 5. Again, it's one of those books that while I was enjoying it, while I was reading it, I just thinking about it, I want to reread it again, and just with what I know going into it the second time and just experiencing it again. And it's just one of those books that I keep thinking about, and I keep thinking about those characters, and I keep thinking about what they went through and what they thought of, and it's just, for me, this was a fantastic book. Just truly phenomenal. It has very much gothic vibes. It's very twisty, and yeah, I don't even know what else to say. I feel like I'm blabbering at this point, but loved this book so much. Okay, so last up, and this is a 5 out of 5. And I was so surprised. I kind of just bought this on a whim because one of my favorite YouTube creators, Lachlan from Lach's Libraries, I'll put her down below because I love her content. She reads a lot more romance than me, and I've done some romance, but not too much. But I still ended up getting this book because she just raved about it, and so I knew it was contemporary romance, and I did not expect to have the experience that I had. So that book is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings, or Hastings. I think it's Hastings. Jessa Hastings. This book was, oh my God, like I felt every possible emotion throughout this book. I wish that I did a reading vlog on it. So this book is a contemporary romance. Shocker that this is my favorite book of the month. I can't get over it though. This book is a contemporary romance, and we follow Magnolia Parks and her group of friends, and they are all these very higher up socialites in the London scene. It very much gave me Gossip Girl vibes, like to a T, like Chuck and Blair, but up the toxicity by like 100. So it follows Magnolia Parks and her on again, off again, long friend, boyfriend, if that makes sense. Like there's so much history between these two, but also so much damage and so much toxicity that's going on. And it was just an extremely heartbreaking, joyous, emotional, happy, sad relationship and journey for these people. I can't even, you just need to read it. Just know that it is a toxic relationship. These characters, like I loved them and I hated them. I was annoyed. I was happy. I was rooting for them. I was saying, what are you doing to them? Just every single emotion and response possible I had in this book. I cried multiple times. I laughed multiple times. It was just, it's an emotional roller coaster to say the least. So if you like that, I highly recommend this. But know that because I saw some of the reviews that of people not liking it because the relationship's toxic and they were just getting mad. But like for me, that was part of the joy of this book. The writing of this book, I tabbed this thing like crazy. And once I finished it, my fiance was getting so annoyed at me. Once I finished it, I was like going back and reading all of these quotes to him. The writing just like, oh my God, sometimes it was just like a kick to the guts. I want to reread this and write in the book and like thoroughly like fully annotate it, because I just tab first time through unless I know I'm going to really like it, and then I'll write in the book. But I cannot just write in a book right off the bat. I need to know that my writing is reserved for books that are just above and beyond. And this is one of those books I want to reread it. I want to write in it and draw in it and just experience this again. I'm so surprised that I enjoyed a contemporary romance the way that I've enjoyed this one, and I'm just so happy that I read it. I'm so happy it came on my radar because of Lachlan, and I already ordered the rest of the series. I am so excited to get into the rest of the series. I loved this book and I can't say that enough. It was everything, okay? It was everything for me. So that is everything that I read in January. Overall, it was a pretty good month. One thing that sucks is that the book I was most excited for ended up being the worst book, but 3 out of 5 is still not that bad. I ended the month on just such a high note with Magnolia Parks. I literally finished that January 31st. So I ended the month on such a high note, and now I'm on a little bit of a romance kick. So expect a little bit of more romance in next month. So I will be doing a book haul soon. I am waiting for one package to come in, and then I'm going to do like a book unboxing and book haul. So that will probably be my next video, so keep your eyes out for that. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. Please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe for future content, all the YouTube things to help your girl out. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend a moment with me and talk about books. Let me know what you guys read in January. What was your favorite? What was your worst? And I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.